everybody! Welcome to the Encounter page. We are so excited that you're here. My name is Sid.
And my name is Dixon.
And we are community group leaders here at Encounter. Again, I am just so stoked that y'all are here and that you clicked on our page. Dixon, how excited are you?
I have this overwhelming urge to just hit the whoa right now, and I think I'm about to do it. I'm about to do it. Okay. It's like, hey, there we go. Okay, so guys, there's gonna be a very important link tree below in our descriptions, and we want you guys just to hit that and follow that because it's gonna have all of our social media on there, our Instagram. It's gonna also have our podcast on there. It's gonna have a lot to do with our C groups too. What about that?
Yes, so we would love for y'all to get involved in our community groups. You can find all the information in that link as well, and it's just a great way to meet more people at Encounter and get invested in this family and community that we have. And if you aren't ready to do in-person quite yet, we also have so many virtual options, and we have C groups going every day of the week, guys. So make sure and check that out. We'd love for you to be involved here.
All right, we love y'all, and we hope you're blessed by this sermon.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. If you have been tracking with us for any amount of time, you know that this week is a big week for us. It's the first time in like 5 months that we have our in-person encounter happening. We are super stoked about it. Unfortunately, if this is your first time seeing this video, you've probably missed it by now. But if you're able to come out next Tuesday at 8 p.m. at Doxology Church and join us in person for Encounter. We would love to have you there. But tonight we're going to answer a question that I know something that I've had, and I'm sure most of you have felt the same and had the same question that I have had. How do we find rest in anxious times? How do we find peace when everything in our world seems so chaotic and out of control? And look, let me tell you, I know for me, there's nothing that makes me more filled with anxiety than being out of control, and there is nothing that makes me feel more out of control than in dating. Man, let me start off with the story for you guys. So my wife and I, we met each other during the second semester of freshman year when we were at TCU. And for the first month, we didn't kiss each other. None of that happened because we were trying to just take it slow. And I didn't want to put any pressure on her because I really liked her. I didn't want to mess anything up. And so I was going to kind of let her drive that train, let her drive that ship on how long she wanted to wait. I didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable. And so about a month in, we're sitting in my dorm, we're watching a movie. And she looks at me, she asks this question. She's like, so, when are you going to kiss me? And inwardly, I'm like, this is the moment. This is it. Like get ready. You better know what you're doing by now because this is your big chance. This is the moment. Outwardly, I'm like, whatever, I'm doing pretty good. But inwardly, I'm freaking out, right? And so she looks at me and we start going in, right? Like I start going in for a kiss. She comes about halfway, and about halfway in, she just does one of these, like a turnaround like that. And I'm like, what just happened? Are you kidding me? Like that was the signal of all signals. So when are you going to kiss me? That's the signal. And I'm like, what just happened? Like I was so clear. I was letting you drive the train. I had it all under control. Then all of a sudden, the last minute, somewhere between the time when you said, so when are you going to kiss me? And we leaned in, she realized I'm not ready for this. And I'm like, what? And so I'm freaking out at that point. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. Like I didn't mean to push it. I feel so bad in that moment. And she leaves, we kind of work it out, and I sit down in my chair at my desk, and I'm just like, whoa, like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm so filled with anxiety at that moment because I'm just like, I've tried so hard. I've controlled everything. The dates have been great. I've obsessed over what I was going to wear. I've made sure that we've had engaging conversations. And then in this one moment, beyond my control, things just kind of start to fall apart. And I'm wondering, like, is this the end? Like, is she uncomfortable? Is this the end of our relationship? Fast forward, it's not the end of our relationship. We're married. We've been married for 6 years. But in that moment, I felt so out of control, so anxious. Guys, maybe you've never been in that situation. I'm just going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe say you're better at dating than I am. But I'm sure that you've had a similar situation of feeling out of control. Maybe some of you, you're looking for friends right now. Just got to campus and you are overwhelmed with this need to not feel alone. It makes a lot of sense, right? And so you're overthinking everything, though. You're thinking about, okay, what brands am I wearing? What jokes am I laughing at? Who am I hanging around with? What am I interested in? So that you can put the best foot forward and try to control the way that everybody sees you so they want to be friends with you. Maybe it's not friends. Maybe it's schoolwork. And you're like, I know what I want my future to be. I know what that job needs to be. So I'm going to get these grades. I'm going to plan this way. I'm going to get this internship. I'm going to pad my resume with these activities, trying to control everything. And then what results out of that is this low-grade fever of anxiety, doesn't it? Now, it's not like something so wrong that you're just overwhelmed and saying, I'm just buried under this anxiety. Maybe that's true. I hope it's not. But maybe it is. But likely, there's this little bit of anxiety that's just kind of underneath the surface. Can't quite get away from it. It's not always on the front of your mind. But when you really stop to think about it, things just don't feel good, right? You don't feel like you can just rest and be at peace. You feel a little bit anxious about something because you can't control it. And then add on to that, look, COVID, I mean, for goodness sakes, like that's enough of a chaotic situation to make something that would already be hard being a student even more difficult. I mean, you got canceled internships in there, you got social distancing in there, and you got all these things that make it so much more difficult to be a student. Your life seems out of control, chaotic, and you're left with this low-grade fever and anxiety. That's where Jesus comes in tonight. He answers the question for us, how can we find peace in the midst of anxious times? We're going to be in Matthew chapter 11 tonight. If you want to pull that up, that would be great. Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Jesus says, look, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Guys, what Jesus is doing here, he's making an invitation to us to find peace. But before we take a look at how we are to accept that invitation, let's first look at the one who's making the invite. Jesus says in verse 29, I am gentle and lowly. Or you could say, I'm gentle and humble. The Christian life is more about unlearning the things that are untrue about God than it is about learning the things that are true about God. What I mean by that is this. Every single one of us has misperceptions about God. Whether these are false facts that we've consciously chosen to believe, maybe we've been taught by someone that just didn't teach the truth, or maybe they're unconscious emotions that we end up assuming towards God because we believe something false about him. Where these things are kind of rooted in is that we have this idea of projecting onto Jesus, projecting onto God, our skewed instincts about the way that the world works. For example, human nature typically dictates that a wealthy person will look down on a poorer person. That's kind of the way that we generally think. That's the way that the world naturally is organized. Wealthy people, we think, tend to look down on those with not as much money. Let me tell you a little something right now. One of the things that I love the most about YouTube, and I am not being sarcastic in this in any way, I am dead serious. I love it when I watch a YouTube video and I just get flexed on so hard. I love it. I'm like, show me the Lambo one more time. Please, you only have one Lambo? I'm going to a different video where they got 5 Lambos. I want you to flex on me so hard right now. I love it. Like, you only have a 15,000 square foot mansion. Dude, I could find this 5 other YouTubers with 20,000 square foot mansions. Flex on me. This is all you got. I want it. I love it. And it's just like all that is this wealthy person trying to make someone like me who's a pastor with no money feel terrible about themselves. It doesn't really do what they want it to because I love it, but it's the idea. A wealthy person is trying to make someone with not as much money feel bad about themselves. They look down on it. Beyond just wealth and someone who's poor, we tend to think like someone who's really righteous tends to look down on those who are not perfect and kind of judge them, right? A righteous person judges someone who's really imperfect, or a beautiful person tends to look down on someone who's tends to look down on someone who's not nearly as beautiful and physically, I guess, gifted as they are. We tend to think that our human nature, it dictates the way that the world works. And we project that onto Jesus and saying, if that's the way the world is, that's the way that God must be. Whether we consciously do that or we unconsciously do it, we project it onto God. We think, well, God sits up there and he's mad at you when you have sex. He's mad at you when you look at porn. He's mad at you when you don't go to church. He's mad at you when you haven't read your Bible. God's just disappointed in you. We have this vision that God is angry, he's distant, and he's quickly frustrated. Guys, I know I do that all the time. And it makes the Christian life feel burdensome, joyless, frustrating. But Jesus sets the record straight right here in verse 29. He says, that's not what I'm like at all. In fact, I'm gentle and I'm humble. When he says, I'm gentle and humble in heart, recognize this. And this blew my mind when I saw it for the first time. Of all 89 chapters in the Gospels, this is the only time when Jesus tells us what his heart is like. It's the only time. We learn a lot about what Jesus did. We learn a lot about the miracles, his habits, his teachings, his followers. We learn a lot about that in the Gospels. But in all 89 chapters, this is the only place where Jesus tells us what his heart is like. When we talk about heart, what the Bible means by that is that it's not simply speaking of your emotional life, but it's speaking about your motivational headquarters. What gets you out of bed in the morning? What do you dream about when you're daydreaming? It's your motivational headquarters. It's the center of everything that you do. It's the center of everything that you are. Your heart is what defines and directs you. And Jesus is saying, my heart is gentle and humble. It's what defines it's what defines me, And it's what motivates me, being gentle and humble. It's in this moment where Jesus kind of pulls back the veil and lets us peer in and see what his heart is really all about. He's not trigger happy. He's gentle. He's humble. He's meek. He's not harsh. He's not reactionary, not easily exasperated or frustrated. He's the most understanding person in the universe he's trying to communicate. At the same time, he's also saying he's lowly or he's humble. Jesus is accessible. He's not greater and above. In fact, in all of his glory and dazzling holiness, he's not up there with a pointed finger, but he's up there with open arms. Jesus is the most understanding person in the universe. He's saying, that is what I'm like. That is my heart. Jesus dreams about helping the burdened find peace. It's his central purpose. It's his central motivation. Jesus says that is the one that is making this invitation. And he wants us to lay out, and he lays out for us that first step. The first step to having this invitation of finding peace in an anxious world is to simply, in verse 28, hear the invitation. Look what it says. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. The first step to coming out of the storm, the first step to calming that fever of anxiety that you feel, the first step to finding certainty in the midst of chaos is to not clean yourself up. It's not unburden yourself or collect yourself before coming to Jesus. In fact, guys, look, it's your burden that qualifies you to come to him. It's your very burden is a thing that caused him to extend the invite to you. There is no other step. It's as simply, if you have a burden, Jesus wants to bring rest for you. He says, all who come to me, all who are labor and are heavy laden. Labor is something active. It's something that you put on yourself. It's a reason, like you are the reason why you're anxious about something. You've caused it for yourself. When you're heavy laden, it's something that's passive. When you're laden with something, it's something that is placed on you. Maybe there's some burden that's been placed on you. So whether you are actively trying to crowbar your life into the exact form you want to take it in, or whether you find yourself weighed down with something that is beyond your control, Jesus is saying, I want to give you rest. I don't want you to exist in this burden, in the chaos, in the stress. I don't want that for you. I want you to find rest, deep rest, rest on a soul level. Look, if you remain unconvinced, let me drive this point home with one more picture for you. What we do at Encounter every year is over spring break, we take a trip to Guatemala. And one of the things that we do there is we have a medical clinic. And there's some days where that clinic is packed out, and there's some days where it is just kind of empty. But every day, no matter if it's packed or if it's empty, I'm there and I'm like, I want more people to come. I'm never frustrated when someone comes in because they can't see well. I'm not frustrated at them because of that. I'm not frustrated at them because they're sick and they can't make themselves well. I'm not frustrated that they need some vitamins or medication. I'm not frustrated by that. I just want everybody to come because it is why I'm there. It's why I traveled all this distance so that I can help make someone sick well. It doesn't matter if there's no one in the clinic or if that clinic is packed out. Every new person that comes in, I'm thankful that you are here. I am joyful because you came to me in your sickness. Jesus is the same way. There's not too much that you can bring to the table. There's not an amount of your sin, there's not an amount of your burden, of your stress, of your worries, of your doubt that he says is too much and he turns you away. It's simply when you come to him, he's like, I'm so glad that you came here. Let me make you well. Let me give you peace. Let's move on. He says after that, he tells us how we actually get that rest. What are we supposed to do? Verse 29, he tells us. He says, after you've heard the invitation, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. What he tells us is after you have heard, accept the invitation. Accept it. And you accept it by taking the yoke of Jesus upon you. Clear enough, right? No explanation needed? Of course not. It doesn't make any sense because we don't use the idea of yoke in our world. Let me get a little bit historical with you for a quick moment to explain it to you. If you're not quite into that stuff, man, it's YouTube. You can skip ahead, but I think you're going to want to hear it. What he means by yoke is that a yoke was an instrument of labor. What oxen would have, you would have a team of oxen that would put this yoke on, and they would pull whatever plow or whatever it is the master wanted them to pull in order to accomplish and achieve what he needed them to achieve. So it's an instrument of labor. It would make things difficult on those oxen. Put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. I want to explain a parallel idea for you. At the same time, in the same time in history, you would have Jewish leaders, and each one of them would have a different way of interpreting the Old Testament or interpreting the law that God had given to the Jewish people over how they're supposed to live. Each one interpreted it a little bit differently, and a lot of times they would add additional laws to it. They'd say the things that you have to also do these things to be faithful to God. And so each teacher would have this separate yoke, and over time the Jewish community would refer to this as the yoke of the teacher, the burden that the teacher was placing on the follower. And so Jesus, what he's doing is he's contrasting his yoke with their yoke. He says in Matthew 23, verse 4, they tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay on people's shoulders, and lay this yoke on people's shoulders, but they themselves are unwilling to lift even a finger to help. Jesus' diagnosis of their burden is that it's heavy, it's difficult. What it ends up being, it ends up making you feel bad about yourself, feeling like a failure, feeling like you're falling behind, feeling like you're never going to be good enough, like you're never going to measure up. It leads to this low-level fever of anxiety. Guys, does that sound familiar? Sound like something we've already talked about? Look, anything that you pursue besides Jesus has a yoke that you must put on. Each master has a list of demands that you must meet in order to accomplish the goal that you want to achieve. You want friends or you want to date that certain person? Wear these brands, act this way, be interested in these things. You want to get that job? Get these grades, get that internship, pad your resume with those things. Maybe for some of you, your false master or your yoke is put on by a false Jesus. You've got this idea. Maybe you grew up in this religious tradition where it was the idea that if you were good enough, then maybe one day God would approve of you. And inevitably, you would fail. You'd beat yourself up. You'd feel shame, and you'd try to come back around to God in the end. But it's a false idea. It's a false Jesus that's your master. It puts a burden on you. All these things put a burden on you. And Jesus is saying, look, I've got something different for you. Put on my yoke. My yoke is different. Look, my question for you is, what yoke are you carrying? Problem is not that you want friends or that you want to succeed in life. Jesus doesn't want you to be lonely or aimless. The problem is that you're looking to those things to provide something for you that they were never meant to provide. Look, you might find friends. You might get the dream job, and I hope you do. But you won't find rest for your soul. You haven't found freedom. You've merely found a temporary relief from the anxiety and the fear and the stress. The rest that Jesus is offering is different. It's not a temporary relief. It's lasting freedom. Let me talk to you about it this way. This is what he means, how he provides lasting freedom. Because he gives you peace knowing that the ultimate things are taken care of. One of the things that you may not know about me, if you haven't met me before or haven't listened to many of the things that we have on this channel, is that traveling for me really stresses me out. I really don't like it. I know that in our generation, that's basically the greatest sin you could ever commit in this era of wanderlust and travel Instagram. Everyone's dreaming about traveling. I don't like it. It stresses me out. I'd like to go to the same 3 places and I'm good. I'm happy with that because travel's stressful. But I never really thought that travel would be stressful to me. The first time I realized it was actually going on my honeymoon. And I just realized I was a really bad person when I traveled. I was snapping at people. I was like, I got to get there like 5 hours early because of like, what if something goes wrong? I was just this ball of stress. As I was thinking about it, I was realizing why. It's because my parents weren't there. And in the past, I've always traveled with my parents. And while it's good to be on your honeymoon without your parents, I was realizing it's not good for me to travel without my parents. Because my parents always took care of everything, especially my dad. Things would be chaotic in that airport. Flights might be missed. We might miss a connection. They might delay us. They might bump one of us off the flight. One of us might be seated in the complete opposite direction of the airplane. Weather may cancel it. All those things might happen. But my dad always seemed so steady in it. He wasn't worried about it. And as I was realizing, it's because my dad knew that as chaotic as the things that were happening around him, the most important things were still true. And no matter how chaotic that airport was, it wasn't going to change the most important things. We still loved each other. We still had a roof over our heads back home. We were still ultimately going to get there one day. We still had enough to eat. We still had each other there. The most important things were still true. And what Jesus is offering us here is that idea, that you can know that the most important things are true. You can know the end of the story. You can know the way it turns out. You don't have to worry and stress about that. Look, if I were to tell you today that at the end of your life, you had a rich and fulfilling life filled with people that loved you, and you had a job that you loved and that you felt purpose in, if you were to know that, would it make this season a little bit less stressful? Would you worry about having friends a little bit less? Would you be less obsessive about your schoolwork knowing the way that the story turned out? Of course you would, because you know the ending. You know that ultimately, no matter how chaotic it might feel now, I know it's going to be okay in the end. And that's what Jesus is promising us here. He's like, look, you can know that the way the story ends up. There might be this little point in your life right now where things are chaotic, where things seem out of control, and you might feel like you're lacking something that you so desperately want. That might happen. And that might happen a lot in your life here. But you can know that no matter how chaotic this little piece of your life is, over time, the eternity that you'll spend with him is set. It is full of joy. It is full of peace. It is full of love. It is overwhelming abundance of those things. And you can know that that is true. You can know beyond a shadow of doubt. It is set. And so no matter what chaos you're walking through now, no matter how you might feel out of control, no matter what you're anxious about, you can know the story ends up good. You can know that. What Jesus is promising us here is not this quick fix. He's not saying, hey, look, come to me and tomorrow you're not going to feel any anxiety anymore. He's not promising that. And I don't want to promise that to you. I don't want to sell you a bill of goods that's not true. But he is saying that you can know the end of the story. He is saying that you can know it will all work out in the end. He is saying that no matter what you walk through, you can know it is well with my soul. When you're lonely, it is well with my soul. When you are rejected, it is well with my soul. When you fail, it is well with my soul. In a pandemic, it is well with my soul. You know that whatever happens, it will be okay. Because you've read the end of the book. You've seen the end of the movie, and it turns out okay. So you can have confidence no matter what chaos you're walking through, because you know, in the end, everything will be okay. And that's a peace, and that's the rest that Jesus promises. If you've never accepted Jesus into your life today, if you've never accepted that gift of peace for your soul, of rest for your soul, Jesus wants to give it to you tonight. He wants to give it to you today. Right where you are, wherever you are, all over the world, right where you sit, whether you're driving your car or you're sitting at a desk, you can pray and ask Jesus to come into your life. You can accept that gift of peace and rest for your soul, right where you are, by simply saying, Jesus, I lived so much of my life apart from you. I don't want to do that anymore. I know that I need you. I'm a broken person. Accept me, because I want your sacrifice. If you pray that, we want to know. If you pray that, reach out to us, fill out that connection card and the link below. We would love to celebrate with you and help you walk and take some next steps into that life that Jesus promised you. Guys, we love you. We're always here for you. Reach out to us. Hope to see you guys next week.